Welcome to the fifth lesson in this series, where what we're going to do is going to get the car, hopefully, to slip through an oil slick in a kind of nice and visual way. Now, you might be surprised that there's a video dedicated to this particular effect, because it's something that's very similar to what we did actually to the bouncing. We're going to use a tween when we hit the oil slick. We're going to spin, and unlike the bouncing, what we're going to do is not calculate a direction. We'll simply carry on in the way that we're facing and slide a little bit, and it gives a really nice effect in the end. The reason why we have a video dedicated to this one is because adding this second one in is going to add a little bit of complication to the car. And the reason for that is, in the unusual case, but it can happen, that you slip through an oil slick and you then hit the edge and bounce. Or the other way around, you hit the edge and bounce and go into the oil slick, which makes you slip, which makes you hit the edge and bounce. And I'm sure you can imagine we could get in a mess there with tweens working at the same time, doing different things. And in fact, when I was testing things and building things, I ended up with some quite spectacular bugs in there of things basically spinning, firing effects, and braking inside the game. So we're going to need to refactor our car a little bit to be able to manage exactly what state the car's in. So whether it's driving, whether it's spinning, or whether it's bouncing. And this setup's also going to be needed for later on, because we'll have another state which will be the race being over, and another one actually where the car's waiting for the race to start. Those are things that we don't have yet, but we will have later on. So what we're going to do in this video is refactor the car code a little bit so that we've got some enumerated constants to represent what state it's in, and then we'll use those to make sure that when we switch between different states, we can manage whether the user can interact and whether we're risking the overlap of tweens or something like that. So before doing anything with the oil, let's refactor the code. So I'm going to drop into the script view, select the car scene and the car.gd. Now, one thing I would like to do actually is delete this code that's commented from here. I don't really need it anymore. And whilst I was having a look at things actually before pressing record for this particular video, I noticed something that I had forgotten on the tween, and that's some easing in and out. So at the moment when we do the bouncing, if I just run the project and crash into the edges here, it's a very linear effect. It's still pretty good actually, but you can add a little bit more to it by doing some easing in and out. So on the bounce tween, here, what we can do is we can call a function called setEase, and then I'm going to select the tween ease in and out. Now you can call this actually on individual property tweens themselves, or just get it to apply to every property that it does, which is what will happen here. So when I run this, we'll probably see absolutely zero change, but it should be, yeah, it is easing in and out very, very slightly there. I think anyway, probably placebo, never mind. So I'll press F8 to close that down. So let's refactor this for state a little bit before we add in the oil. So we have here the bounce done, the bounce, and the hit boundary, and they are all related to bounce, aren't they? So what we could do is put a hash here, and actually region, and I'll call this a bounce, so that we have kind of a region in our code we can close up, and we know that's related to bounce. And at the end, I've got to remember this command. I think it's end region. There we go. And that allows us to collapse up the code when we're just dealing with bouncing. That's going to help us because we can then make a region for slipping as well. All right then, so let's start with the states. Let's go right up to the top here. So we'll add a new enumerated constant that can be called a car state. Open up some curly braces here, and we can put the various states that we're going to need. Now, initially, we're going to have a driving state, a bouncing state, and a slipping state. And then what we can do is set ourselves up with a variable down here, which is going to be called underscore state. And we'll initially set that equal to the car state driving. And then inside the physics process, if we are not driving, then we're simply not going to run here. So we're going to say that if the state is not equal to car state driving, then we'll simply return. And with that being there, we don't actually need to mess around with the physics process in the bounce here. So we can take this off here and also take this off as well. What we do, however, need to do is change our state. Now, rather than updating it directly inside here, we'll write ourselves actually a function for doing this. So I'm going to make a region here called state, and also do an end region. And then here we'll write a new function called change state. That's going to take in a variable, which is going to be our new state, and that's going to be a car state. And the first thing we'll do here is check whether the new state is equal to the existing state. If it is, then we can just return because we're doing something completely pointless. Otherwise, what we can do then is update our state to this new state. And now what we can do is match the new state and see what state it is to determine what we might want to do. So we can type match, which is a bit like switch if you're familiar with C# or Java or something like that. So we match new state. And here we want the car state dot and bouncing. And for now, what I'll do is type pass and then also put the car state slipping also in here for later on as well. And what we'll do here is we'll actually invoke our bounce. I want to scroll down and check our bounce. Here it is. So we're going to invoke the bounce from inside here. So we'll do car state bouncing and invoke bounce. Now we have a problem here that the bounce needs to take a direction into here because we're using the direction here to the path. So what we'll do instead of this is we'll set our bounce target up. I'll cut that out, and we'll set the bounce target up actually here. So here we can say that our bounce target is our position plus the direction to path multiplied by the bounce force. So we're setting that here. So now in bounce, we can invoke that without the direction to path, then go up to the definition here, remove that from the bounce here, bring that up a little bit more, and we're still, or should be, exactly the same as where we were before. So when we hit the boundary, we invoke the bounce, and so on. We're not doing anything with the state yet though. So let's do that. Let's grab hold of our change state, and down here, what we'll do is invoke our change state, and we'll go to car state.bouncing. And now when the bounce is done, we want to change our state back into the driving state. So we set the tween to null, and then we'll change our state back into the driving state. And that should have, hopefully, I say, hesitating, reset things a little bit or reconfigure things a little bit that allow us to manage changes between various things going on from our change state here, which you'll see in a moment is going to help us determine whether we're allowed to do something in case maybe something else is going on. So I want to double check this. The bounce done changes the state to driving. The bounce is normal, velocity, kill the tween. Do we know where we're going? Yes, we've got a target. And when we hit the boundary, our target is set here, and we change our state into bouncing. Okay, and then up in the physics process here, if we're not in the driving state, then we don't allow the player to do anything. So this is probably a good time to run this and just check that we can actually bounce. Yeah, we're bouncing. Okay, that looks all right. I don't see any red letters. It's saying you've made a mess and I'm confused. So that's all right. That seems to be okay. Okay, so I'll press F8 to close that down, close down the output. So step 2 now is to deal with actually going over the oil. So what we'll do is we'll add another region down here. So I'm going to do a region, either oil or slip. I'll call it slipping, and we can end region. And then we'll drop a new function in called hit oil, and that's going to be invoked from the oil patch. So the oil.gd when we hit it. So what we can already do in here is area dot and hit underscore oil. We don't see it, or I don't see it here because I haven't saved actually the car.gd. So I'll save that. So that's now, it should be detected. So I'll just try this again. Area dot and hit oil. There we go. So let's go back to the car.gd. And now we can use our state. We don't want to go into the slipping if we're already bouncing. Otherwise we could end up with a little bit of a mess. So here what we're going to do is we're going to say if the current state is bouncing, then we'll simply return. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll change our state into the slipping state. So we'll change ourselves into the slipping state. At the moment, we're not doing anything when we change into that state. If I just hide this region here. So if we look at the state here, we're not doing anything with the slipping, but what we can do is write a function now, which we will then do something. So we'll make a new function called slip on oil. This is going to be quite similar, actually, to the bounce one. And I'm going to be horribly lazy here because this is YouTube, so why not? And I'm actually going to copy all of this code here and then go down into here. We are going to make some modifications, don't worry, but I'm just going to paste it in here and then go right up to the top. Where do we have our bounce tween? I'm going to make another tween here, and this is going to be called our slip tween. Then drop all the way back down into the bottom of the code, and we'll adjust this as we need for the slipping. So the first thing we're going to do is not actually set the velocity to 0. This isn't going to happen here. We're going to make our checks for the tween and kill the tween if it's doing something. We are going to spin, so we'll do this reset of the rotation to a sensible value. And what I'd like to do here actually is carry on going in the direction we're facing, but with a slightly lower velocity. So we basically get a really nice sort of slowed down spinning effect. So we're going to adjust our velocity. So we're going to say that our velocity multiplied by equal to, we'll make this a random range, and we'll do something like 0.3 to 0.5. So we slow ourselves down quite a bit. We could actually put this as a customizable parameter, couldn't we? And in fact, let's do that. I think that's a little bit nicer to do that. So we'll add ourselves an export. I'll take this one and I'll call this a slip speed range. This is going to be of type vector2, and then we can make this a vector2. And by default, I can't remember what I just did, but I'll do 0.2 to 0.5, I think. So we have this in the inspector, so we can customize it by track, etc. And then we can use this down inside the code here. Where are we? Bounce tween, slip tween. Here we are. So velocity, random range. So we can take our slip speed range.x and our slip speed range.y. So what we'll do then is take our slip tween and create it. We will set it to be parallel, and we'll also set the ease. And similar then to the bounce tween, we're going to update the position and rotation. So we'll put slip tween here. For the position, what we're going to do here is going to go to the current position that we are, plus, and then we'll have our transform.x multiplied by our velocity. I'm going to go to distraction-free mode so you can actually see this. So we've got our new velocity multiplied by our transform.x. Now we're using the bounce time here, and I'm actually going to keep this. So we're going to slip for the same amount of time that we bounce. If you want to add another property, of course you can for that. Then also what we want to do is spin here. I'll leave the spin at 720 here as well. So it's very similar to the bounce tween. And finally, we can set parallel to false. And then when we're finished, rather than bounce done, we're going to make a function called slip done. So I'll change the name of this to slip. And then above this, we'll write a function called slipDone. And here we can set the slip tween equal to null, and we can change our state then back into driving. And with that done, what we can do is we can actually grab hold of the slip on oil here, and then go up into our state change, and we can invoke the slip on oil. So I'm going to collapse the bounce region here and just have a look at the slipping region again. So we're going to invoke this hit oil from the oil.gd here. When we do that, we check if we're bouncing. If we are, then we don't do anything. We're going to let bounce control everything. Otherwise, we're going to change our state into car state slipping. If we change our state into car state slipping, what we're going to do then is invoke the slip on oil. So that invokes this function here. We check if we've got this tween, etc., etc. And then what we do is set up the tween, the velocity. And to me, that looks all okay. And when it's done, we invoke the slipDone, where the tween is set to null, and we change back into driving. Now, the only thing that could maybe happen here when playing the game is that we switch into the bounce state whilst we're slipping, and this is going on here. And that could cause a tiny bit of a problem. The bouncing, though, definitely needs to happen. We can prevent the slip happening, which we're actually doing. If we're bouncing, we're not going to be slipping. But we definitely need the bouncing to work, otherwise we're going to be able to drive off the track. So what we'll do is we'll check actually in the bounce if the slip tween is running. And if the slip tween is running, then what we'll do is we'll kill it. So where's the code for that? So I'm going to copy these lines here because I don't want to repeat these lines. And inside here, I'll write a new function, and I'll call this kill slip tween. Then we can drop the two lines in there, and whenever we invoke this, we get rid of this tween. So I'll get hold of this function here, and we can drop this in here, and then also we'll put that at the beginning of the bounce here as well. So we make sure that we get rid of any slipping going on because we're about to bounce off the edges of the wall. Okay, so I think that should have us now slipping on oil patches. So I'm going to come out of a distraction-free mode, go back into 2D. I've got this feeling as ever that I've forgotten something here. Now I do handily have an oil patch actually here. I literally just instantiated one to check. I'm going to put that over here somewhere so I can actually drive into it. And where's the car? Get hold of the rotate tool and rotate the car as well. And then I run this, and let's see what happens if I crash into the oil patch. Oh, it slipped. Cool. That looked quite good actually. And what I'd like to actually test here is the slipping and the bouncing as well. So I'll grab hold of the move tool and put that maybe here, and then where's the car? And put that here, and I'll rotate the car as well, actually, just to drive straight into it. I want to see what happens if I collide into this, whether it gets in a right old mess. So I'll make the oil actually go a little bit closer up to the edge here. All right, so I'll run this. Are we about to have horrors and bugs? Let's have a look. Okay, it still didn't actually go through it, unfortunately, because the velocity was too low. So what I'm going to do is actually come back after a quick fade and just check that we can go through the slick and bounce off and that everything's okay. So I'm back after a quick fade, and I've been messing around quite a bit with this, placing oil slicks next to the edge, trying to bounce off them, into them and stuff like that. And nothing seems to be going wrong, which is a good sign. So that's great, actually. That means we've made quite a bit of a stride with the car. There's a little bit of refactoring gone into this. So we've got our slipping region of code, and we've got our bouncing region of code, and also our state region of code in here. But that's going to make the management of the car a lot easier also later on when we're waiting for the race to start and the race is over and things like that. So we've now got more or less the mechanics of the player car complete, apart from sound. I think we can turn our attention now to actually managing the car driving around the track, so recording laps, lap times, and also hopefully preventing the player cheating by going backwards as well. So we'll start looking at that from the next video.